Hello, so this is my first video that will help parents to fight an EHCP provision from a physiotherapist point of view before it goes to tribunal. So this is a series of videos with ideas that parents can do to help get more provision of physiotherapy on your child's EHCP, either in the appeal process. If you're not happy with the EHCP, then you can appeal it, or it might have gone past that, you might already have a tribunal booked, but before you get to that tribunal stage, you can have something called a mediation, which is a private assessment by a physiotherapist, and then your current NHS physiotherapist, who will talk about the support your child needs and hopefully come up with a compromise or an agreement on the physiotherapy. All of these things, these two options, are much cheaper than going to tribunal. It's in parents' best interest, and it's also in the local authority's best interest. So this is advice for parents on how you can start to do these things. You might need an assessment with a private physiotherapist, or you might be able to do it yourself. It all depends on your NHS physiotherapist, the therapy team, their kind of policies and things in place. Not all tribunals are avoidable, but hopefully this will help. So section E is outcomes. The outcomes that your child will be given from a physical and sensory perspective are to be gained in the next key stage. So this could be, depends on how old your child is. It could be a year, it could be 2 years, but a key stage is a long period of time. So you will have some very kind of generic outcomes, and then under that they'll be broken down into smaller steps. Now, you know your child the best. You know them more than the NHS physio, private physio, teachers, teaching assistant, everything. So you know what they've achieved since they were born, more recently, and it's not just physio, you can think of everything. They've achieved motor, sensory, physical, speech and language milestones throughout the time that you've had them. So when it comes to goals, we want this to be very, very relevant to your child. It is a legal requirement for them to be SMART. So the physiotherapist governing body is called the CSP, Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. Our legal health registration is called HCPC, Healthcare Professions Council, and these state that goals have to be SMART. They also have to be agreed with you as a parent and the child or young person if they are able to. So if you have not agreed your child's goals, you have every right, way before a tribunal, to go and set some which you agree with. I've got some examples here of ones which I've recently done and we've won the case for, and one child went from termly physiotherapy, so 3 times a year, to having weekly physiotherapy after a tribunal, and the other one went from having half-termly physio to weekly physiotherapy. So we want to think about the goals. Are they SMART? Are they relevant? Are they ambitious enough, looking at the time frame that they should be achieved in, and if not, what can we do about it? And what I most find is that the EHCP that your child's been given usually is very, very vague. It's broad, it's vague, it's not quantified, and it's wishy-washy. That's what I like to say. Wishy-washy because they could or they couldn't achieve it. So anyway, hopefully these goals will tell exactly what I'm trying to explain. So one child, her goal was to access the curriculum on the floor with her peers. So what does this mean? It could mean sitting on an adult's lap. This child is 3 years old. It could be sitting in a corner seat with loads of support, sitting in a Firefly go-to seat with lots of support, in a recliner seat with a head control, or it could be sitting independently, who knows? And then it was broken down to sit with minimum support for 2 minutes. So that's quite a smart goal. It is quite useful. However, when I was looking into this child and assessed them, they can already sit independently for 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time. This goal is for in this particular child, it was for 18 months. So if they can already sit independently for 30 seconds, we only want to increase that. So we changed the goal to sit independently while they're doing an activity inside their base of support with no support at all for 2 minutes. And that was to be achieved in just 6 months' time. So by the end of it, their goal was to sit on the floor with supervision only and take part in their learning activities. So we change that goal lots, and the reason this is so useful is because when the goal is changed, when the goal is more ambitious, it means they need more hands-on physiotherapy with a physiotherapist. Because improving a child's balance and their motor skills is risky. It's always risky. You don't learn to walk without falling down. No toddler learns to walk and then walks without falling. In fact, toddlers fall for 250 times a day. That is what people have shown. So sitting is the same. A child will never learn to sit without falling. And when these children fall, they might have things like seizures, or if they bang their head, then it might be worse than other children. Their risk of falling is much, much greater. They're bigger. They're learning the sitting skill at age 3 years old in this case, instead of 6 months old, like a neurotypical baby would. Things are risky, they're very difficult, and it needs to be done by a physiotherapist with lots of experience. They might have high tone, low tone, involuntary movements, all these different things. So changing the goals changes the amount of physiotherapy. And when you've changed the goal and given it to the NHS physiotherapist, it's very difficult for them to look at a very ambitious goal, write them a programme which is full of lots and lots of very risky activities, and say that the class staff can carry it out. The next one I want to talk about is a 5-year-old child, and her goal, her long-term goal, was to mobilise around the classroom with supervision. Now, mobilise, again, what does that mean? Can mean crawling, can mean bottom shuffling, it could mean being pushed in a wheelchair by a member of staff. It doesn't say independently or dependently, it just said mobilise. It could be walking, walking with a frame, or anything. It was then broken down to using her walker with supervision for 2 meters. So again, a bit more specific, which is good. However, looking at this child, her physical ability was standing at a surface independently, cruising, which means sidestepping independently, and because she could do that in my session with her, when she came, I got her to stand holding on to a forward-facing walker with 4 wheels and walk, pushing that walker like that. She also lifted one hand up and did it, and all of these things mean she's ready to walk independently. And the walker that they were referring to was one that she had been provided by the NHS, which had a saddle or a seat. Now, these saddles and seats are supposed to be to provide support if needed, maybe if the child fatigues a bit, but when you have a child who is non-verbal and you can't necessarily follow instructions, and also a child who might be quite anxious about falling, you might have a child who has very low muscle tone and weakness, and the natural thing is, if you have weakness or low tone, is to just accept all support given to you. And even if you don't have weakness or low tone, if you sit in a sofa, you're not going to sit in it like this. You're going to relax, because why wouldn't you? So when you give a child with low tone, or any child maybe, a walker with a seat, they're going to sit in it. And it then turns into a scoot-along toy. Now, that's not to say that that's not useful, that has many benefits, but it's not walking. One's walking, one's not walking. They're very, very different. So the walker she used in my clinic, with the 2 handles at the front and pushed along, she was walking with very minimal support. She was taking all the weight through her lower limbs, shifting her weight and stepping. Whereas the one that they were referring to in school, she was sitting on a saddle and scooting herself along. And this particular goal was for 19 months' time. So this child's end of the key stage was in 19 months. So the goal, use her walker with supervision for 2 meters. Firstly, it was something she could already do. And because this went to tribunal, I worked out when she could do it. And I went back and I looked, and she actually could do that 8 months previously. So she had a goal in her EHCP, which she had achieved 8 months ago. Now, this is clinically irrelevant. And to be honest, there were many things, but that was one of the main things that made the judge go with my report rather than the NHS's recommendations. So this just shows that goals mean everything. So once this child, we didn't need to go much further, the tribunal was over quite shortly, but once we had talked about this goal, we also could have said, look, if her goal is walking independently, that changes everything in her physio programme. Her physio program used to be things like pull to stand with supervision of one. She can pull to stand easily, and again had done that a year before. And it would be things like access the school playground with supervision and with her walker, walk around the school environment and the corridors in her walker, all these things that she could do. And yes, class staff can carry those things out. So yes, it's fine for her to have that physiotherapy program done by her class staff. But when you change her goal, and what we changed it to was independently walking over a smooth flat surface, consistently, safely, with close supervision only for 5 meters, once we changed it to that, within 6 months, the physiotherapy changed drastically, because now you need to be doing independent standing. And independent standing with a 6-year-old who is much taller than a toddler learning to walk for the first time, with slightly low tone, with all sorts of anxiety, that is not something for a teaching assistant to do, or teaching staff to do. So you change the goals, you change the program. You go from a low risk program that teaching assistants can carry out to a very, very high risk program that only somebody with lots and lots of hands-on experience with children of all different kinds of tone, with issues like anxiety, all of these things, you change the program and it has to be carried out directly by a physiotherapist. So the way that you can change your child's goal is thinking about what can they do. Is the goal SMART? Have a think, is it specific, is it measurable, is it achievable, is it realistic, and is it time framed? Is it SMART firstly? If it's not, let's make it SMART. Now, like I said, there are overall outcomes, but then under this, it should be broken down into very specific, measurable SMART goals. So number 1, is it SMART? Number 2, going through all of those, is it realistic and achievable? Usually they are far too achievable. So really think about that. Usually they've been achieved. Yes, they're achievable, they've done it. So can your child do that already? And can they do it in the next 6 months? But the goal is, if the goal is for 2 years or 18 months, then no, you want that goal way more ambitious. You can break it down into a 6-month goal, that's fine, but make sure the goal then continues over to the next 6 months and the next 6 months. And then how do you know what goal is relevant? You can go to a private physio, and if you do have an assessment, then think about other goals they've achieved. How did they do it? In what time frame? Make sure you've got all of this written down for that physio. They probably won't have time to read a huge EHCP, so instead of giving them a very big bundle, a lot of the time working documents are hundreds of pages, just give them their current gross motor skills, what they've achieved, in what time frame, and with what input. It doesn't have to be private physio. You might not have private physio input. You could say, I did this, this, and this with them. This is what they achieved in this amount of time. You know what your child can achieve and when they can achieve it. And you want to make those goals much more achievable and much more specific. So you can go to a private physio about that, or you can have a look at their recent progress yourself, and you can think, when did they achieve this milestone? When did they achieve head control and sitting in their wheelchair, if they did achieve it? And you know, you can think about all sorts of things. At the moment I'm trying to talk about every single child I see, which is impossible, but you could do from something like sitting in a wheelchair and even just fixing and following on an object. When did they achieve that? How quickly did they achieve it? And with what support? Was it with a physiotherapist, or was it doing a program with their teaching assistant? All the way to crawling. When did they crawl? So anyway, goals is the first thing, and the next video I'll be talking about is what else makes physiotherapists carrying out a physio program different to a teaching assistant carrying it out, because that is the real nitty-gritty argument that we get down to. Who is going to carry out this program? And that is what makes you either get weekly physio or termly or half-termly physio. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. Please feel free to comment, message, email us, click on the contact form on our website, ask me any questions you like. I'm really, really passionate about it. I'm very, very passionate about children getting the therapy that they deserve for free off the NHS, which is what we should be getting. So thank you for listening, and ask me for any questions.